A plane departed from Dubai bound for India on yet another routine journey, as the aircraft frequently operated the route between Dubai and India, vice versa. All systems were functioning properly and the plane reached its destination without incidents. However, due to a small miscalculation, the aircraft ended up suffering an accident near its destination, resulting in the tragic loss of 158 lives. The story of Air India Express Flight 182 was touching and deeply impactful for people. Understanding how this accident occurred, who was involved, and whether it could have been avoided becomes essential. The video explores the history of Air India Express, which operated daily flights between Mangalore, India, and Dubai. On May 22, 2010, a similar flight, Air India Express Flight 811, landed at Dubai International Airport around 11 in the evening. The flight was supposed to return to India under the name Express Flight 812. During refueling and routine checks, 160 passengers boarded the plane for India. Express Flight 812 utilized a special aircraft, the Boeing 737-800NG, designed to land on shorter runways. This specific plane was almost 3 years old at the time. The responsibility for the flight was in the hands of the crew that brought Express Flight 811 back from India to Dubai. Captain Zako Gluska, aged 55 with 10,000 hours of flight experience, led the crew, while First Officer Harb Heliovalia, aged 40, served as the co-pilot. After formalities in Dubai, the flight took off towards Mangalore International Airport. During the first hour and 40 minutes of the flight, there was no communication between the captain and the first officer as the captain fell asleep due to fatigue. The first officer had to take over communications. Approaching the Gamma waypoint at 5:30 in the morning, the control tower suggested using the ARC-ILS DME approach procedure for landing in Mangalore due to reduced visibility conditions. This procedure utilizes radio signals to guide the aircraft toward the runway. The video continues to describe the flight's trajectory and the events leading to the tragic accident, investigating the circumstances contributing to the tragedy. The first officer reiterates the suggestion, while the captain maintains his decision to proceed with the aircraft's landing. Despite recommendations, the captain establishes an aggressive descent rate of 4,000 feet per minute to reach the runway. During this process, the Enhanced Ground Proximity Warning System (EGPWS) repeatedly issues warnings of the sink rate and pull up. However, the captain seems to not pay proper attention to these alerts. The control tower then asks if the pilots have established the ILS approach. Although all assistance systems have been turned off, the captain confidently confirms to the first officer that they are following the ILS procedure. Based on this, the control tower grants landing clearance to the aircraft. However, the aircraft's altitude was still too high for a safe landing, despite constant EGPWS alerts. Despite the first officer's recommendations to reconsider the landing and other factors indicating risks, the captain continues the approach for landing, ignoring the danger signs. Due to the excessive altitude, the aircraft lands considerably beyond the intended threshold, approximately 670 meters past the end of the runway. With only 853 meters of runway to stop and considering the aircraft's above normal speed, the situation becomes extremely critical. Despite efforts to brake, including activating thrust reversers, the speed does not decrease as expected. Faced with imminent runway space shortage to decelerate, the captain attempts to take off again just 6 seconds after engaging the brakes. However, it was already too late to avoid the disaster. The aircraft overshoots the runway, crossing a 60-meter strip and a 90-meter safety area before plunging into a deep gorge. Despite the rapid arrival of the rescue team to commence operations, only 8 of the 166 occupants of the aircraft survived the accident. A joint investigation, involving Indian airport authorities, the DGCA, and representatives from Boeing, is initiated to clarify the causes of the incident. The NTSB of the United States also offers assistance, while the Indian government establishes an inquiry tribunal to examine the events. The investigation findings point to the captain's responsibility for the accident. His stubbornness in proceeding with the landing, despite warnings from the co-pilot and the EGPWS, are highlighted as the main causes. Failure to consider unfavorable conditions and imminent risks led to a series of wrong decisions resulting in the tragedy. The first officer reiterates the suggestion, but the captain remains adamant about landing the aircraft. Nevertheless, the captain sets a descent rate of 4,000 feet per minute to reach the runway. At this point, the Enhanced Ground Proximity Warning System (EGPWS) repeatedly issues warnings of a sink rate and a pull-up. However, the captain does not pay much attention to these alerts. The control tower then questions if the pilots have established the ILS approach. Despite having turned off all assistance systems, the captain confidently assures the first officer that they are proceeding with the ILS approach. The tower controller authorizes the aircraft's landing. However, the aircraft's altitude was still too high for landing despite EGPWS alerts. Despite the first officer's suggestions for a go-around and other factors, the captain continues to approach the runway for landing, disregarding all signals. Due to the excessive altitude, the aircraft lands well beyond the intended threshold, approximately 670 meters past the runway's end. With only 853 meters of runway for the aircraft to stop and considering its above normal speed, the situation becomes critical. The captain activates the thrust reversers upon landing, but realizing that the speed isn't decreasing, attempts to take off again just 6 seconds after engaging the brakes. However, it was already too late. The aircraft continues to overrun the runway, surpassing a 60-meter strip and a 90-meter safety area. Eventually, it plunges into a deep gorge. The rescue team arrives at the scene to commence operations, but unfortunately, out of the 166 people on board, only 8 manage to survive. Indian airport authorities, the DGCA, and Boeing officials initiate the investigation. The NTSB of the United States also provides assistance, and the Indian government appoints an inquiry tribunal to investigate the incident. After investigations, it becomes clear that the accident occurred due to the captain's error. His insistence on landing and underestimation of circumstances, ignoring the co-pilots and EGPWS's warnings, are pointed out as the main causes. Despite having had adequate rest before the flight, the captain slept for an extended period after takeoff, possibly suffering from sleep inertia, affecting his ability to make sensible decisions upon waking. Additionally, the unavailability of the Mangalore Area Control Radar on that day also significantly contributed to the incident, delaying the message to reduce the aircraft's altitude. Assigning the incident solely to this factor would not be entirely accurate. Assigning the incident solely to this factor wouldn't be entirely accurate. Share your opinion in the comments about who you believe is responsible for this incident.